My name's Alex. I'm 32, and I've always been the easygoing one in the family. I'm the middle child between two siblings. My older brother Mark, the golden boy, and my younger sister Emily, the golden girl. I guess that made me the silver spoon, presentable enough, but not the first pick for anything important. Growing up, Mark could do no wrong. He once crashed my dad's car into a ditch, blamed it on slippery roads, and got off with a pat on the back. When I accidentally dropped a glass at dinner, I got a week of icy silence and a sarcastic classic Alex from Mom. That pretty much set the tone for everything that followed. So when Mark got engaged to Lisa, the most high-maintenance woman I've ever met, I didn't expect a warm welcome. Lisa comes from a family that thinks middle class is a slur. The first time we met, she looked at my shoes and asked if they were vintage or just worn out. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Every time we interacted after that, there was a flicker of disdain behind her forced smiles. Still, I kept my distance. I figured she and Mark deserved each other, two people obsessed with optics, appearances, and Instagrammable moments. They loved the idea of love, as long as it got likes. The wedding planning was a circus from the start. I offered to help. Mark said, "We've got it covered." I sent them a thoughtful engagement gift, nothing too flashy, just a framed photo of our grandparents' wedding day, something sentimental. Lisa texted back, Thanks. We'll find a place for it. Maybe in the basement, lol. I didn't reply. I just mentally shifted the budget I'd set aside for their wedding gift towards something less personal, more transactional. If I was just an obligation, I'd treat it like one too. 3 weeks before the wedding, Mom called me. Just wear something formal. Don't overthink it. And be polite to Lisa's family, please. That last part had weight to it, like she expected me to be a problem. I bit my tongue. Sure, I said. Wouldn't miss it. And I wouldn't. Not because I was excited, but because I had a promise to keep. I told Dad years ago, back when he was sick, that I'd always be there for family milestones. He made me repeat it while we sat in the hospital waiting room after another round of chemo. Even if you're treated like a ghost, he'd said with a tired smile. Especially then. So I showed up. The venue was a picturesque vineyard, the kind you only see in magazines or Hallmark movies. String lights everywhere, live quartet playing soft classical music, people dressed like they were auditioning for a perfume commercial. I arrived early, found the coordinator, and asked where I was sitting. She glanced at the list, frowned, then motioned me toward the back of the reception tent. Table. Actually, you're near the fire exit. It's that chair right there. I followed her finger. It wasn't even a table, just a folding chair. Alone, tucked between a fake potted tree and a red exit sign. No place card. No table number. No name. Just there. I stood still for a second, thinking it was a mistake. That someone would run over, apologizing, maybe offering me a seat somewhere real. But no one came. People were arriving in waves, smiles, hugs, cheers. I spotted Emily and Mom near the head table, laughing with Mark. I raised a hand. Emily waved half-heartedly. Mom didn't even acknowledge me. I try not to take it personally. Tried. That's when Lisa walked by, flanked by two bridesmaids. She saw me standing next to the folding chair and smirked. "Oh, you found your seat," she said, then gave me this once-over, like I was a thrift store donation. Only real family gets a real table. I blinked. "Excuse me." She didn't even stop walking. "Don't take it personally," she said over her shoulder. It's just space was tight. I stood there for another full minute, heartbeat loud in my ears. The envelope in my pocket felt heavier than ever. It was a gift card, but not just any gift card. $1, $500 to a luxury spa resort. Something they mentioned in passing during the engagement party. It's the only way to unwind after planning a wedding, Lisa had said, massaging her temples dramatically. I kept the card in an envelope with a handwritten note that said, "Enjoy a peaceful honeymoon," on me. But I didn't hand it over. I pulled the envelope out of my coat, looked at it for a moment, then tucked it back in. I turned around, walked toward the front of the tent, and as I passed the champagne table, I said just loud enough, "Enjoy the honeymoon while it lasts." A few people turned to look. My mom hissed, "Don't make a scene." Her eyes were hard, like she was already preparing her speech about how I ruined the day. But I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just smiled. Because I already had a plan. A quiet, subtle, slow-burn plan. I didn't leave immediately. I wanted to stay long enough to plant the seed. I made my way to the open bar and ordered a soda, casually sipping while watching the chaos swirl around the bride and groom. Lisa was glowing, for now circling from one curated photo opportunity to the next. Mark looked a little overwhelmed, but he always did when he didn't have a script to follow. The photographer shouted directions, the bridal party flitted around adjusting bouquets and reapplying lipstick, and I just stood there like a shadow no one noticed. Well, almost no one. My cousin Sarah, the only person in our family with a functioning emotional radar, found me by the bar. "Hey," she said, giving me that look, half sympathy, half, "I'd burn this place down with you if you said the word. I just heard from the coordinator where they stuck you." "Folding chair by the fire exit," I said, raising my glass in mock salute. "Real classy." Her face twisted. "You didn't deserve that." "No," I agreed, "but I've learned not to expect much." We talked for a few minutes, mostly small things, until I spotted the DJ starting to set up. That was my cue. I nodded toward the reception tent. "You might want to keep your phone ready later," I said. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" I smiled. "Not unless you're a fan of Lisa's curated reality." She didn't ask questions. She just grinned. "Text me if you need backup." I slipped away before dinner was served. No one noticed. Not Mark, not Mom, not even Lisa, who was too busy adjusting her hair while someone took a video of her twirling under a chandelier. My car was parked down the gravel drive, past a little security booth and a line of catering vans. I sat behind the wheel for a minute, pulled out my phone, and opened the folder I'd been building for 3 months. It started small screenshots, mostly. Text from Lisa to the wedding planner, berating her for minor issues like using too many beige napkins. A few social media posts from Lisa's private Instagram account, where she mocked Mark's mom, our mom, for being dull as toast. I had copies of emails she accidentally CC'd me on when she meant to talk trash about the deadweight relatives, me included. But the real gem was a voice memo. A short, bitter rant she recorded after her bridal shower, where she called Mark a temporary phase and bragged about how his money was just her starter husband fund. She had sent it to one of her bridesmaids as a joke. That bridesmaid, Amanda, happened to also be friends with my ex, who happened to also be sick of Lisa's games. And that memo? Let's just say it had a date stamp, a clean audio file, and just enough venom to make even the most diehard wedding guest blink twice. I'd been sitting on it, debating for weeks what to do with it. At first, I wanted to be the bigger person. Let Mark figure it out himself. But then the folding chair, the missing name card, the look Lisa gave me like I was gum on her shoe. And my mom, my own mother, not even flinching. That's what made up my mind. I uploaded the audio file to a burner email. Then I created a group message. Not to everyone, just enough to start a ripple. Mark, a few of his groomsmen, Amanda, Sarah, a handful of Lisa's cousins who looked uncomfortable every time she spoke, and one particular recipient who would be the real accelerant, Lisa's ex-boyfriend, who, fun fact, she'd met up with just 6 weeks ago at a girls' trip in Vegas. I included a short note. Since I wasn't invited to speak at the reception, I figured I'd share my toast here. Congrats. I hit send. Closed the app. Then I drove home. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls, 38 text messages, and a voicemail from my mom that started with, "What did you do?" and ended with, "You better fix this, Alex." I didn't listen to the rest. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and sat down to read the fallout. The group chat had exploded. Amanda had forwarded the memo to even more people. Someone uploaded it to a wedding gossip subreddit. It was already trending. A screenshot of Lisa's Instagram, where she'd posted best day ever, was being stitched into memes alongside quotes from the memo. My favorite read, "Starter husband fund?" Sounds like a limited time offer. But the real kicker? Mark hadn't posted a single thing. Not a photo. Not a thank you. Not even a "married life begins" status update. Just radio silence. By noon, Sarah texted me they canceled the post-wedding brunch. Apparently, Lisa locked herself in the hotel bathroom. Mark's at his buddy's house. He looks like he's been hit by a truck. I didn't reply, because I wasn't finished yet. There was one more thing I had up my sleeve. I gave it a day. Not because I was nervous, honestly. I'd never felt calmer, but because the silence was louder than any confrontation I could have staged. No angry text from Mark. No backpedaling apologies from Lisa. Not even a half-hearted, "We need to talk" from Mom. Just this strange vacuum, like everyone was pretending I didn't exist, which, ironically, was how they'd been treating me for years. Only this time, it wasn't on their terms. By the second evening, the cracks were starting to show. Sarah called me. Not a text, a full-on call, which was rare for her. I answered and heard her exhale like she'd been waiting all day to vent. Okay, you need to know what's happening. How do you too? I said, half smiling. No, seriously, she said. It's like implosion levels of drama. Apparently, someone had sent the voice memo to Lisa's extended family WhatsApp group. Her aunt, the one who paid for half the wedding flowers, was not amused. Her parents had already been lukewarm about Mark. Now they were embarrassed that their perfect daughter had broadcast her marriage as a financial strategy. Lisa tried to spin it as taken out of context, but the audio had her laughing and saying, "I'll keep him around until the condo finishes construction. Then it's whatever. He's sweet, but I'm not building a future with that." Yeah, real charming. Meanwhile, Mark, who had always lived in denial when it came to Lisa's red flags, was reeling. According to Sarah, he hadn't gone home after the wedding. He stayed at his groomsman Ryan's place and had apparently spent most of Monday pacing the living room, phone in hand, muttering things like, "Was it always like this? And how did I miss this?" I'll admit, I didn't feel good about him hurting. He's my brother. We weren't close, but still, I didn't want to destroy him. I just wanted him to finally see what I'd seen all along, that Lisa didn't love him, that Mom never really protected me, that I'd been used as a prop, a reliable wallet and background character at best. But I hadn't even gotten to the last part of my plan. See, the Spot gift card? I didn't cancel it. I redirected it. A week before the wedding, I transferred it into a reservation under a different name, a woman Lisa worked with, someone she hated. Her co-worker Jasmine, the one Lisa had once called a try-hard social climber who always wears knockoff bags. I'd heard the story at a family dinner where Lisa dominated the table, venting about office politics as if everyone else lived under rocks. Jasmine, according to Lisa, had once dared to ask if she could split a group lunch bill with her. So when I called the spa and changed the recipient name to Jasmine W. plus guest, I knew what I was doing. Lisa would have no idea until she called to schedule the appointment, which, according to Sarah, happened the morning after the brunch was canceled. Lisa, hi. Yes, I'd like to confirm a reservation for a couple's massage. It's under. Wait. What do you mean it's already been claimed? Who's Jasmine? Are you kidding me? I could practically hear the glass shattering on the other end. That little twist? That wasn't revenge. That was artistry. Later that evening, Mom finally called. I let it ring twice before picking up. Her voice was sharp, tight with embarrassment. You had no right to sabotage your brother's wedding like that. I leaned back in my chair. Didn't realize I was invited to it. Don't be clever, Alex. I wasn't trying to be. Just accurate. She sighed like she always did when I wasn't playing along. You don't know what it's like to hold a family together. No, I said quietly. Because I've spent my whole life being told I'm not really part of it. She paused. I could hear the static of her silence stretching between us. You made a scene, she said finally. No, I replied. You made a scene when you watched me sit alone by the fire exit and didn't say a word. I just turned on the lights. I hung up before she could answer. Later that week, Sarah sent me a screenshot of Lisa's Instagram. The wedding photos were gone. Every single one. Her account was suddenly full of beach quotes, yoga poses, and vague captions like, "Healing isn't linear," and "Sometimes growth means letting go." Mark's account, on the other hand, hadn't been touched. Still radio silence. But I wasn't done watching. Because while the fallout had started publicly, the real unraveling was still happening behind closed doors. Mark had decisions to make. Lisa had explanations to give. And Mom, well, she was going to have to sit with the discomfort of a son who finally said no. But none of them knew the last part of what I'd set in motion. Not yet. Because Lisa's ex-boyfriend? The one she saw in Vegas? Yeah, he messaged me. Turns out he had his own receipts. Photos. Flight stubs. A hotel confirmation email with Lisa's name and his, dated for the exact weekend she told Mark she was reconnecting with her bridesmaids. And I had a feeling Mark would want to see them. But not in a vindictive way. Not anymore. Because sometimes, the best kind of revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It's just the truth shown at the right time, in the right way. And now that the wedding lights had dimmed, the music faded, and the rented fairy tale turned back into dust. It was finally the right time. I waited exactly one more week. Not because I was stalling, but because some things need time to sink in. And Mark? He wasn't someone who could process betrayal overnight. He was the kind of guy who needed space, quiet, and a push. I knew my brother. He lived his life believing in the best-case scenario. The fairy tale. The glossy surface. That if you smiled for the photos and said the right things, the rest would figure itself out. But this wasn't something he could ignore. Not when every word in that voice memo played like a warning he never heard until it was too late. Not when the person he married, who had sworn to love him, was outed as someone who laughed about him behind closed doors. And not when the people who stood by and watched it happen finally stopped protecting the illusion. On a rainy Thursday morning, Mark texted me. It was short. Need to talk. Can I come over? I stared at the screen for a second before replying, yeah, anytime. When he showed up, he looked like a man who'd run a marathon without ever realizing he'd started one. Drenched, pale, with bags under his eyes and a crumpled hoodie that didn't match the crisp, curated version of him Lisa used to polish like a trophy. He stepped into my apartment without a word, didn't take off his shoes, didn't sit. He just stood there, dripping. I didn't know, he said quietly. I know. He rubbed the back of his neck like he used to when we were kids and got caught sneaking out. It's not an excuse. I didn't want to know. I nodded. That's how you kept surviving. He sat down on the edge of my couch like it might disappear under him. I listened to the whole recording 5 times. Then I looked through our messages. Read some of the stuff you sent over the years. Things I brushed off. Dismissed. He paused, then looked at me. You were always the only one telling the truth. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because the weight of those words finally meant something. For the first time in maybe a decade, my brother saw me. Not as a backup. Not as a guest in his perfect life. But as a person. His brother. The one he forgot to fight for. She said I embarrassed her, he muttered. That I wasn't ambitious enough to match her image. That she only went through with the wedding because she didn't want to start over. He laughed, but it wasn't funny. She said all that before we even said, I do. He fell silent, then asked, was I really that blind? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You weren't blind, Mark. You were just scared of what you'd see. He sat there for a long time, then finally looked up. I called a lawyer. I raised an eyebrow. She was smart, he continued. She didn't put her name on my condo, but she did set up some shared accounts. One of her bridesmaids told me she planned to drain it slowly over a few months. I had them frozen. Lawyers drawing up an annulment. I blinked. That fast? He smiled grimly. Turns out it's easier when the marriage is barely legal and the proof of fraud is overwhelming. There was a pause. Then he asked the question I didn't expect. Why did you wait so long to do anything? I looked him straight in the eye. Because I wanted you to figure it out yourself. He nodded slowly. But you didn't wait forever. No, I said. Because eventually, you crossed a line. Or maybe she did. Maybe Mom did. I don't know. All I know is when I sat down in that folding chair by the fire exit, something snapped. And I realized I'd been giving pieces of myself to people who wouldn't even give me a seat at the table. Mark winced, and I could see the shame creeping into his expression. I'm sorry, Alex, he said, voice cracking. For that. For all of it. For letting her treat you like that. For letting me treat you like that. I didn't say it's okay. Because it wasn't. But I did say thanks. And for us? That was enough. We sat in silence for a while. The rain tapped against the windows like it had something to say but couldn't find the words either. Mark eventually stood, wiping his face with his sleeve. She's moving out of the apartment tomorrow, he said. Didn't even fight it. Just asked if she could keep the espresso machine. I laughed. Let her. She's going to need all the caffeine she can get if she wants to start over with nothing but Instagram quotes and her pride. He cracked a real smile at that. Before he left, he turned at the door. You know, I don't think I ever told you how much Dad trusted you. I raised an eyebrow. He told me once, Mark continued, that if anything ever happened to him, you'd be the one who kept this family honest. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Too bad no one listened, I said. We're listening now, Mark replied. When the door closed behind him, I exhaled deeply. Not out of relief, exactly, but because the years of being overlooked, dismissed, and treated like furniture at my own family's events had finally been acknowledged. Not fixed, not undone, but seen. 3 days later, Mom called again. This time, she didn't scold me. She didn't defend Lisa. She didn't even ask me to apologize. She asked if I wanted to come over for dinner. Just the two of us. I almost said no. But something told me this wasn't about obligation. It wasn't about smoothing things over for show. It was maybe her way of realizing how much she'd ignored the son who never demanded attention but always showed up anyway. So I said yes, not to make peace, but to set new terms. At dinner, she didn't bring up Lisa, or the wedding, or even the voice memo. She just said, "I'm sorry I didn't notice." I looked at her for a long time, then said, "I noticed you didn't." And she nodded. That was the start of something better. Mark filed for annulment 2 weeks later. Lisa didn't contest it. The fallout on social media was glorious: cryptic posts, deleted comments, and a mysteriously vanished wedding highlight reel. Her starter husband fund dried up faster than she could refresh her browser, and within a month, she was back living with her parents, applying for brand deals that didn't exist. I sent her a final gift, a tiny, folding chair, with a note: "Only real family gets a real table. Wishing you all the best." She blocked me, obviously, but I wasn't looking for closure from her. The closure came in the form of a quiet Sunday brunch, just me, Mark, and Sarah at a cafe downtown. We laughed about the voice memo, caught up on life, and most importantly, talked like actual equals. Like family. The kind that sees you. The kind that saves you a seat. And not by the fire exit. This time, I sat at the center. And it finally felt like I belonged there.